Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I have another exciting interview to do here, and I am with Abbey today. And Abbey and I have recently connected. I have done a lot of research on what she does, and I'm excited to bring this interview to you because I really believe that what she has to say will help with our continual deconstruction and advice she gives on self-care and everything like that, I think is going to impact all of our lives here today. So Abbey, thank you for being here today. Thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm like excited to share some stuff to help you guys out.
Awesome. Well, Abbey, for all of those that may not know you, would
Mhm.
you just kind of take a moment and kind of introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Abby Stangmeister. I am a licensed therapist in New Jersey, but I also have a coaching practice that I coach people globally, especially professionals and parents that are dealing with burnout. So, if they're healing, they want to prevent it. That's like my biggest passion because I want people to be living like their authentic life and their dreams and to be living now and not waiting to retire or to be grinding at work or wherever they are and not enjoying life. I think you can definitely balance it somehow, balance not 50-50, but enough that like you feel good. And I want people to have that. I mean, I have found that in my life. I used to be someone who worked really hard and then played really hard on the weekends and thought I was doing it all the right way. And my body went, nope, haha. Actually, in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle, I was like doing a paddleboard race, and there my body was like, haha, no. Finished the race, recovered from it, and had to really kind of undo everything about my life and kind of rebuild because what I was doing wasn't working. So that's where it like started my passion, how to work and be productive and work kind of smarter and make sure I'm doing self-care, but that my self-care isn't burning me out. Um, and I definitely believe that there's a way to do that. The other thing that I'm super proud about is I'm a single mom by choice. I became mom at age 41 to a beautiful little girl. And so like I always like to say like the impossible is possible. So it's a little bit about me.
That's amazing. I did not realize that, paddleboard, are you an athlete as well? I mean,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I used to like, believe it or not, stand up paddleboarding or prone paddleboarding, which like a prone board is like a long surfboard. Think about it that way. It's like shaped a little different. I used to race. I traveled all over. I enjoyed it, and I was like, I want to meet people and I want to travel. So I used to work like Monday through Thursday, and then Friday, and like once spring and summer came, I would take off and go race. And I was like, this is great. I'm living like this amazing life. And it was, I loved it, but I was doing a lot. And my body, your body only holds up for so long when you do that kind of stuff. So, like, the work hard, play hard mentality is, you can only go so far with that. You definitely need some of that quiet downtime, let
right.
your body rest. Yeah. But I've been a swimmer my whole life. I did CrossFit at one point, um, triathlons, Olympic weightlifting. Yeah, I've done all kinds of stuff, but
Amazing.
I'm mostly tied to the ocean.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
thanks.
Okay. So tell us, do you have any kind of religious background or experience with religion?
So no, my maternal grandma was Jewish and my maternal grandfather was Catholic. And when they met, she was disowned.
Oh,
Um, and we weren't brought up with any religion really. It was Christmas was Santa Claus and Easter was the Easter Bunny. Um, and I was surrounded. I grew up in Nazareth, Pennsylvania for most of my life, and people, very religious, and I was not, and it was tough because I would sometimes like be at sleepover party, and people would be like, "All right, it's time to pray," and I didn't know
hmm.
what to do. It was really awkward and uncomfortable, and
Yeah, I bet it
even,
was.
I mean, even when I went to Italy, I lived in Italy for 6 months. in Florence, and to go to to see, I was studying art history. I wanted to go into all these churches. So you had to go to mass, and I'd be like, I don't know what to do. And I like would feel really uncomfortable when that conversation would come up because I wasn't tied to a religion. I hadn't really studied any of it. And I was just like, I'll study something and kind of figure out like what do I believe in? And I still haven't really put the time into that, to be honest. Like I believe that there's something, I don't know what that is. And it's more, I think, something like within me that I feel. And I just remember being younger and my friends complaining about going to church, and my parents were like, do you want to go? And I was like, no, all my friends complain. Like, why do I want to go to that on Sunday? I get to sleep in. Like,
I know, right?
so that was like me as a little girl. And then as an adult, like interested, I like to hear people's perspectives on it. But still not really tied, and haven't researched enough to say like I'm a specific religion. But I do feel like there's probably something that you just can't explain in the world.
And I've got to tell you, there is, and it probably shouldn't put it this way, but there is a considerable amount of jealousy for someone that's raised in the church environment to hear someone that has not been.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's more normal childhood, if you would, not be. And so, many of my clients that I talk to, the dreams of, man, what would I have been like without?
Yeah.
Trauma and everything like that came through this, some call it brainwashing or abuse when they're younger, spiritual abuse. So I listen to that and I hear something simplistic as the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus, and I think, fun.
Yeah. And I think I totally get that. And I think also for me, there's like a part of me who like feels uncomfortable saying that too, because I don't understand the other side of it. And people are like, well, what do you mean you don't go to church on Christmas Eve? And like, like, you're shamed in the other way. Right. So it's tough. Or I remember freshman year of college, I had two roommates who had both gone to Catholic school, and we were sitting around one night and they were like, how do you even have morals and values if you've never been to church? And like I was like, good. I was like, okay, good question. I don't know, that's how my mom raised me. Like I didn't know, like I was like, what am I felt like I was missing something, until like I became an adult and felt more comfortable with myself. I was always like, felt like I was missing something by not gone to church
see that
in some area.
Especially in society. I mean, we're still predominantly, there's some sort of religious aspect, right? And so I used to ask that question about morals and values, and now realize how wrong that question is, right? That kind of question. So you're right. I'm sure the flip side is growing up, and the majority of kids or people that you're growing up with go to church, or at least have some sort of religious affiliation. So I'm sure that was difficult. Okay, so tell us a little bit about before we get into this next question about your profession. What do you do for a living?
So I've been a therapist for 13 years. I've worked with all types of populations. When I first graduated from University of Penn, I worked as a sex abuse therapist with kids from the age of 3 to 18. Did that for quite a few years until I left that agency and worked other places, and then started my own private practice. So I've worked with kids, sex abuse victims. I've worked with kids with anxiety, depression. I've done couples. I did like all of it. And I think the population that I like to work with the most is anyone that really has a desire to become who they want to become, and they want to put the work in. And I know that it's like uncomfortable to come into therapy and like how to start, but I'm always so proud of the person who reaches out the first time. Like, even if you don't get scheduled that first day, just send that email to a therapist. And you might not, I've had people send me that email and I'm like, yeah, let's get scheduled. And then I don't hear from them, maybe until a year later. I'm like, oh, I remember that name,
Mhm.
but that email's the first step because it's tough. And a lot of times you don't know how to find someone and how to find someone that you're comfortable with. Um, and now, like the course of my practice, I've wanted to reach more people. Um, and so I've moved into coaching for
Mhm.
professionals and parents who are experiencing burnout because I think a lot of it comes down to burnout. Like a lot of times, like it looks like anxiety, it looks like depression. People are miserable in their careers or their relationship. And when you kind of peel stuff away, it's their burnout in some part of their life. Not
Right.
to say that there isn't like a mental health diagnosis there, because there can be. But sometimes we pull it apart and we're like trying to do all the things, and we're maybe even tied up with people who make us feel like we have to do all the things. And we can't be. We got to take some time to breathe and find space to find out who we really are. Um, and I think we've just become a world of you got to go, 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 and you can't stop. And when you do stop, you're scrolling on social media or like bombarded by
Mhm.
things. And, like there's a place for social media, but when you're just scrolling mindlessly, that's like a sign where like burnout's probably happening.
Mhm. Great, great.
Yeah.
And I asked that because I wanted people to understand that you are not only a therapist, but you're a life coach as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you
Right. Mm-hmm.
understand both sides. Um,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, this next question is what I want to ask is
Yeah.
what are some struggles that you've seen in people who are deconstructing?
Yeah. I think there's um, a lot of different areas. And I think the biggest piece is if you're leaving, if you're leaving, you're leaving behind your identity, probably your support system, um, and you're rebuilding. And if you don't have support, then you are struggling the most, and you kind of like you don't have a life vest to keep you afloat. I think that's the biggest piece. So then it's, well, what can I do with what do I do with myself? Maybe like one of your self-care items was going to church. Like that might have been at one point like a place where it felt good because you were told it would feel good, or maybe there was more about that day that felt good. Maybe like after you went to church, you had family time, so it became this routine. Now you don't have that. Now you're like, now what do I do with myself? Like how do I fill that kind of void? I think that's the struggle of people, like letting go of that piece and where do I go next, and like feeling uncomfortable in that in between.
Yeah. This kind of launches into like the topic of self-care even more. So
Mm-hmm.
self-care for people that are deconstructing is very difficult. Um, I think it's a lot to do with the fact that when you're raised in church, you're taught that your identity is wrapped up in somebody else, which is Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, if you come from
Mm-hmm.
evangelical, um, that you're supposed to empty yourself, that you're supposed to humble yourself, that
Mm-hmm.
you're not supposed to, like the view of self is often negative,
Mm-hmm.
right? I've even seen that as a former pastor, time off, okay, you can, but you almost feel guilty for taking it, kind
Yeah.
of thing. So what are some tips you can give to help someone prioritize themselves and begin to establish self-care?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, I'm someone who likes to tie it to metaphors, but like you don't want your phone battery to go empty, or driving in your car. Like you don't want to be empty,
Yeah.
you know? It happens every so often, right? But right? But if you're like the chronic person whose like tank is like on E all the time,
Oh, it drives me crazy.
right? But I mean, it's not good. I don't know. I have to talk to my mechanic. Is it really good for your car to always be like straddling E? I don't think so, right? Like we don't want to do that to our bodies. So you want to like be full. So this way you can give to who you need to give to.
Mhm, mhm.
Because if you're on empty, and someone comes along, your kid, your partner, a friend, there's nothing. How can you support that if you've emptied everything out?
Mhm.
You can't go below empty.
Right.
So I think like sometimes using that gauge of like, where am I at? And it's going to happen, right? But trying to keep like it half full, your phone battery half charged, your body battery half charged. And I think the other piece is like finding what is your self-care, and yours is different than mine.
Mhm.
Try different things, see what kind of feels good for you. And I think a lot of the with the church too is there's things that you were probably told that you shouldn't do that actually can be very good
Yeah.
self-care.
Yeah. And that's, you nailed it right there. There are a lot of things that you're told not to do when you are in
Mhm.
church, right? That now are open, but there's still that, for people that are deconstructing in the beginning stages, there's still that guilt
Mhm.
feeling that maybe this is still wrong.
Mhm.
But I love that you also emphasize that, hey, what may work for someone may not be what someone else
Yeah.
needs,
Yeah.
right?
And
So,
your self-care could be sitting outside and just taking in nature and just being by yourself. It doesn't need to be spending money or doing. I think that's the time where when you're deconstructing, I think that's a helpful time to find that self-care time where it's space just for you.
mm,
5 minutes. 5 minutes is a good way to start.
mm. So one of the things I started doing was going out and sitting in nature,
Mhm.
right? And just the peacefulness of it. Um, would you mind giving a couple examples of what you do? What is it
Yeah.
that you do that really kind of helps you with your own self-care to balance life?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, nature's the biggest one. I live 2 blocks from the beach, and
I'm
I
so
mean,
jealous.
I made a huge life change living in Philly, to come live at the beach, because I really wanted, it's my calming place. And I worked, I used to work like an hour away from here, but I always would find like a body of water to go to at some point. Like near work, I found like this lake. It wasn't really like, it was like one of those industrial centers that had like one of those fountains, but I called it a lake, and I would go like drive and sit and stare at it.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, getting outside in nature and just finding the quiet for a few minutes, I often have a notebook with me afterwards and jot down stuff if I don't have it. Um, I will pull out my phone then, and in the notes section, which has like 20,000 notes, just write down what comes to my head. And maybe for someone, like you might be having like different thoughts, like thoughts of the church, like your current thoughts, like get it all out. So journaling is another big thing for me. I keep a notebook right next to my bed. Actually, it's like in bed next to the pillow. So when I roll over, I can write some stuff down. So for me, being out in nature, journaling, listening to music is something that's really important for me for self-care. Um, Enjoying my cup of coffee, reading, um, and reading books that are like take me to other places. Like I'm not reading psychology books or anything to learn. I do sometimes. I've been listening to some audiobooks, but it takes me forever on like business and other things. But end of the day, I just want to escape somewhere. So that's a great self-care. I do like going to get massages. We were talking about, I went and had a massage this morning, and it's like self-care. It's not like one of those enjoyable massages. It's like dig in there, get all the, but that's still self-care. That's just as important as me getting a workout in. So
It's
I have a lot of different things. And as the seasons change, I have different things for self-care as the seasons change. Like as we head into fall, like it's more hiking versus being in the water. Um, Winter time, I probably watch a little more movies, and I probably cook like longer meals and things like that, because cooking to me is self-care. Um, in the summer, I'm not cooking big meals or like long cooked meals. So I think thinking of like seasonally, your self-care things can shift.
Very good, very good. I love the fact you mentioned journaling or writing down ideas.
Mhm.
One of the things that I think has been beneficial for people that are deconstructing is learning to sit with their thoughts and feelings and not view them as bad.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
if I'm angry, why am I angry? That can be a great teacher. You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, if I'm sad, why am I sad? That can be a great teacher. So, and learning to sit
Mhm.
and journal about it
Yeah.
has been a lifesaver for me as well.
Yeah.
So that being said, it kind of leads us into our next school of thought, because I find that people that are deconstructing also not only struggle with self-care, but they struggle with shame,
Mhm.
right? Um, and a high level of shame. And it can be around
Mhm.
a variety of different things, right? So
Mhm.
um, talk to us a little bit about, what is shame and how does shame destructive in someone's life?
Yeah, I think shame becomes destructive when you start to adjust who you are based on what other people are kind of projecting onto you,
I
you
love that.
know?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you start to go, wait, like here I think I am. So like for you, we were talking before we started the interview with your pipe, right? And like I might have like this I can't even think, but I'm sure like you've had someone say something that would be shaming about your pipe smoking. And then you start to question yourself and you're like, wait, should I really do this? But it's like meditation to me. But oh, and now you're like so stuck on that thought. And what can happen is now you question every time something that was like part of your meditation. Now you question. Now you can't enjoy it. Now you feel lost in it. Now you're thinking about this other person. Now, and what can the spiral of thoughts and questioning, and then can it lead into, unfortunately, there can be a domino effect for some people. Now we're questioning like everything we do across the
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh man, what else did I say to that person? Or wait, I wore a blue shirt, like, like what else? And
Yeah.
I think that's where when I tie in burnout, if you're feeling more burned out and not grounded, someone saying something shameful is going to trigger you more than if you're feeling grounded and not burned out.
Yeah.
So someone may say it and you go, whatever, right? But if you're feeling burned out and you haven't been doing enough self-care, now that thought's going to kind of stick there all day until you kind of talk to your coach, talk to your therapist, talk to a supportive friend, do some journaling, until you kind of like do the things to kind of re-ground yourself and then go, wait a minute, this is something for me. Like, okay, that's just that person's, you know, perspective or what they've learned. Is that
Wow.
helpful?
That was so well put. I love the domino effect
Yeah.
thrown there, especially as a former people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
Right. When
Mm-hmm.
coming up and through the church and leaving, but one being in the church, there's a domino effect for things you're supposed to do and not do. And if you do
Mm-hmm.
the things you're not supposed to do, there is that shame aspect
Mm-hmm.
that comes
Right.
with it. So it impacts every part of your life. And I think that's a misconception, obviously, as you know, that the misconception is, hey, I'm leaving the church and it's because of theology.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just theology. It gets into their marriage. It gets into what they eat. It gets
Mm-hmm.
into what they think. It impacts every part of your life and causes shame in every part of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that domino effect you did mention,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah. And then,
yeah,
yeah. And then where do you go? Then you feel like heavy everywhere. Then there's like it's almost like there's no safe outlet. Like who do you go talk to? What do you go do? Because now you're questioning like every step that you take. So I think it's like really brave of anyone to take whatever step forward in
mm,
this process.
mm,
Like it's really brave because you're where is your foundation? And somehow you have found it within yourself, and that's the piece that you tap into on those days that you are challenged. So on a good day, when you're like, what is that piece? What is that little voice or whatever? Write it down, write it on your mirror, write it somewhere so that way you can look at it, because you're going to need that on those really tough days when someone tries to shame you in some way.
Yeah, I find that it's also tied to someone's self-worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
As well. So let me ask you this, and going off of what you just
Mm-hmm.
said there, how can we begin to start to free ourselves from shame? I know
I
that's a
think
loaded
yeah.
question, by the way.
Oh, there's so many. I mean, there are so many steps. And I think the biggest part is taking time for yourself to find out who you really are. And I know that sounds really simplistic. It's not easy because it's hard to sit and be. So finding like 5 minutes, you know, throughout the day, start with 5 minutes. Like if you're someone that like has your coffee in the morning and you're rushing out the door, try and get up 5 minutes early and sit with that coffee for 5 minutes. Um, I like doing this. I've taught a lot of clients this is like when you get to the grocery store, instead of jumping out of your car, sit for 5 minutes, put the car in park, turn everything off and just sit for 5 minutes and be. And as you start to do that, you can kind of get used to being comfortable with yourself. And the more that you can kind of recharge yourself and get grounded and get comfortable with yourself, the less the impact of shame is going to feel. It won't feel as strong. It won't feel as heavy. You know, you kind of put up like a force field in a way because you're grounded. You're like, okay, so you said that to me and I should be doing this, you know. All right. But I know for me that this is my truth.
So
The
you
only way you can kind of find that truth is finding quiet and deciding what your truth is. And it can always shift as you grow and learn, and that's okay too.
so you kind of as you're sitting, you're prioritizing yourself, if that's
Mm-hmm.
that
It
correct?
comes, yeah, yeah, and your thoughts.
Yeah. And then at the same time, does that then lead into creating boundaries and then choosing yourself in
Mm-hmm.
other situations? Is that kind of where that goes in the way of
Yeah.
sitting by yourself?
Yeah, because first by sitting by yourself and finding that you're learning about yourself, but you have other people in your life, you're setting that small boundary of like, hey, I'm taking 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not as big. It doesn't seem as big as someone saying like, hey, I'm taking like an hour,
Right.
right, to go find myself, and you start there and you kind of start and you're like, oh, I set that boundary. Okay, that was easy, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not easy. And it's like easy at first. This is new muscles that you're building.
Mhm.
You weren't built with these muscles and you were probably told different things, right? So now you're rebuilding.
Right. Does it, in knowing your background and being a therapist, does it
Mhm.
also have to deal with reprogramming the mind? And I ask that because
Yeah.
within evangelicals, there's a lot of talk of reprogramming the mind. So they try to take you the opposite direction,
Hmm.
right? To make
Hmm.
I must decrease so Christ must increase kind of idea. So now
Hmm.
you're looking to go the other way. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah. 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 And that's with a lot of things you want to, I mean, they take it the other direction of rewiring you. And now you want to rewire to find your true self. So by taking that time, I think that's helpful. You could work on coming up with some scripts, whether you want to call them like scripts, affirmations, mantras, like whatever word that you want that can kind of help you. Focus on what the goal is that you're working on. And maybe it's like right now, big thing is like I'm finding my authentic self. I am my truth. Like I am confident in my decisions. And by saying that, especially like when you first wake up and before you go to bed, can be helpful. Um, that could be something where you're talking to yourself and having that conversation of like, what is it that I need?
Hmm. Okay. So along those lines, um, talk to us a little bit about creating boundaries around our self-care. Like,
Mhm.
what are some steps that we can take to establish maybe habits? Maybe that's a
Mhm.
better way of putting it. I don't know. Around our self-care.
Yeah. I mean, I always say to clients, hey, schedule this like you would schedule a doctor's appointment.
Mm.
You won't. But I've taken that back because people cancel doctor's appointments. Um,
They
so
do.
I want you to like think of like you are booking an appointment with the most important person that you've ever wanted to meet. Like, is there someone that you would, maybe they're super famous, someone that you would love to meet? Maybe it's someone from your past, or like, is there someone that you would really like love to meet?
You
I know I'm
know,
putting you on the spot.
always said something like um C.S. Lewis, pipe smoker, or Tolkien, pipe smoker, right?
Okay. So let's say you're going to have the opportunity to meet that. Like, we're going to put that in your calendar. Now, are you going to miss that meeting?
Mm-mm.
Oh, so I want people to like think about that when they schedule self-care, is like, you're not touching that meeting. You're scheduling it with the most important person that you know or that you've ever wanted to meet. And it's yourself and it's your future self. Like, make that appointment with yourself. Don't break it. Put it in there. Make it reoccurring. Put reminders in there. You know, I have reminders in my phone that go, this sounds silly, but go watch the sunset. Because for a while, like, I would forget to go do it
Mm-hmm.
out of laziness or whatever. I would work late, and then I would see this pop up. It's a reoccurring one that happens every year, actually in April, because I remember when I put it in years ago. And I was watching a sunset. I went, why am I not doing this more often? I was away. Why am I not doing it at home? And it's simple, but it's so impactful, that self-care. So put that reminder in your phone. Like, if you're listening today, like, pick up your phone and put it in your calendar right now. Do self-care, put a reoccurring reminder in every month, and it's going to pop up on this date every month on your phone, and you're going to like, ooh, I haven't done a darn thing for myself. All right. I'm going to go do it right now, right?
Yeah.
And
I
so once you start like letting people know like why I'm taking this time, be confident in it. Like, hey, I'm going to go take an hour, you know, schedule it during your day too. You know, if you're working, like, take your lunch break and go do some type of self-care. Who's to say you can't?
help ground yourself, keep yourself grounded, or in the
Mhm.
what you said before, your tank half full, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
totally. So veering a little bit different. I've just got
Mhm.
to ask you, what is your favorite part of your job or
Oh
jobs?
man. Oh, so there's two. I love learning from my clients. I think I have met people in all different dynamics, relationships, professions, and I learn from them every day. And I keep that with me, and that kind of like helps me to grow too. And then the other part is just like inspiring other people and like watching them grow. Like, it's just, oh, like their bodies change. You know, I always say like I want to, and I still haven't done it, like to have them like take a picture on the first day of like coaching or therapy. And then in the future, whenever we might be closing out, or even if it's like, let's just do a check-in, and like everything just shifts about them. Their energy, their facial expressions, the way they carry themselves, and just to see someone come through such challenging moments and then like make their life what they've been dreaming of is like, I just love it. And I have like clients that every once in a while I still hear from. They're like, hey, I'm doing this. And I love, like, no pressure on any of my old clients, but like, I love that too, because I'm still like, everyone's such a part of me. I'm so invested in their future. And I love hearing like that they're on this journey even after our time has ended. So it's really great to see. And it's what keeps me in the field, is I just want other people to continue to like reach their dreams, reach their goals, feel fulfilled, feel content, feel comfortable with themselves. Um, yeah, go after it. Like, whatever's out there, go for it.
Awesome. Awesome. So as we we come to
Mhm.
a close here, what is the best way for people to follow you, get in touch with
Yeah.
DMs open? I mean, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. My company name is Evolving Whole, so you can find me at evolvingwhole.com. The same is my Instagram handle. You can follow me on both. I do have a newsletter that you can join that goes out every Monday, with like some tips, I don't know when this would air. One, I was talking about permission in one of them, or like how to adjust with seasons and how sometimes that transition can be tough. So there's often like some good tips and tools for people to use, sometimes reminders like, hey, did you do self-care this week?
Yeah.
Hey, where are you at? Like, where's your battery at? As like a good check-in. And with any of those newsletter emails, like you can email me and ask me questions. The same thing on social media. I think I'm here to support and to help. If you're looking for someone who you want help with burnout, or if you're like, hey, I have other questions, like what's it like to be a single mom by choice? Like I'm here to answer those questions. How did you become a therapist? Like I'm interested in being a therapist. Like what should I do? Like I'm here to answer whatever I can. If I don't know the answer, I will help you find someone that might know the answer too. I love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Listen, I cannot thank you enough for being
Yeah.
with us today. Go visit her website. As you'll look down below underneath her bio, you will see her different links to which you can ask her questions, peruse what she has to offer, which is an awful lot if you look at her pages. Are your DMs open on your IG or not?
They are. Mhm.
Okay.
They are open.
Okay, so feel
Yeah.
free to talk to her, ask her any questions, as she said, on that avenue or on that platform. Abbey, thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you
for
for
having
teaching us
me.
today. Thank you for your wisdom and insight. Once again, if you are looking for a therapist and she's in network, I assume therapy is like that, or you're looking for a life coach, I highly recommend Abbey as well. So hopefully I'll be able to have you back on here again sometime soon.
Anytime. I would love it. Anytime.
All right. With that, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you for paying attention, following all the way through this. I'm sure you picked up lots of useful tips. Don't forget to set those reminders in your phone. Don't forget to prioritize yourself over everything else. So with that being said, look forward to talking to you again soon. And thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope you have a great day. All right. Bye-bye.